Hey everyone! Great to be back with you all once again. Around 2003, Astro Boy, or Mighty Atom in Japan, was beginning to see more recognition in the US than it had since the 1960s when the original anime first premiered. This was sparked by not only Astro Boy's 40th anniversary, but a new anime reboot that premiered in 2003. Naturally, two new games also made their way here, with one coming to the PS2, and the other on a portable system no less. Yes, the GBA game was heavily praised at the time, and I remembered having very fond memories of it myself. But how does it feel to play it now in 2021? Strap in, and we'll see just how well Astro Boy the Omega Factor for the Game Boy Advance holds up today. Developed by Treasure and Hitmaker, the company formerly known as Sega AM3, and published by Sega in December of 2003 in Japan and August of 2004 in the US, Astro Boy the Omega Factor is a 2D beat-em-up with shooter elements and exploration. The game's general structure has you moving through relatively straightforward stages, fighting multiple enemy types, looking for secret characters and power-ups, and fighting a boss or multiple bosses before the end, all while the game's story plays out. For those who don't know the plot or premise of Astro Boy, I'll do a quick recap here. Dr. Tenma lost his son, Tobio, in a horrible car accident. Unable to cope with the grief of losing his son, he created Astro in the boy's image. He winds up in the company of Dr. O'Shea, also called Professor Hiroshi Ochanomizu in Japan, who brings up Astro while they continue to learn about Astro's past and his eventual role in trying to bring about peace between robots and humans. In this setting, which takes place in the year 2043, humans and robots are beginning to live in coexistence with one another. But not everyone, whether we're talking about the robots or the humans, is happy about this arrangement, and the world is on the brink of a civil war due to these tensions. In the Omega Factor's case, Astro Boy's story revolves around him working out the details of his past, coming to terms with his quote-unquote father, trying to bring peace between the robots and humans, and trying to take down a mysterious threat that's working behind the scenes during all of this. The gameplay is simple but quite effective. While the D-pad moves Astro left and right, the A button is your jump, the B button is your action button, and the shoulder buttons, as well as A and B combined, are all for special attacks. On top of this, Astro can do other attacks and combinations, such as hitting up and B to fire his laser, and down and B to kick. Double tapping the D-pad in either direction will cause Astro to dash, and dodge all kinds of enemy attacks. Jumping and pressing a directional button with A will cause Astro to use his jets and dash in the air. The amount of times Astro can do this will increase as you level up this stat. The special attacks are not only powerful in their own rights, but they're flat out essential to reaching the end of the game. The L button has Astro fire a machine gun that does a small amount of damage and temporarily stuns all enemies on screen. R is a straightforward concentrated laser blast that causes a large amount of damage, and A and B causes Astro to dash in the air and drive his fist right into whatever enemies are in front of him, usually allowing him to go right through them if the attack doesn't defeat them. Special attacks are limited by a meter on the top of the screen, which can go as high as 5. Each time Astro uses a special attack, the meter depletes. In order to bring it back up, you have to use basic punch, kick, and laser attacks. This prevents you from being able to abuse the system, and provides a very balanced approach to the gameplay. Learning to properly shift between normal and special attacks, as well as knowing when to dodge, all become essential to your survival. There are also segments where Astro will fly to the right or left, and your controls will feel more like that of a 2D side-scroller shoot-'em-up. There are also times like the climactic battle with Atlas, where Astro will use his thrusters to float in the air, and move up and down while dodging and attacking his enemies. These segments help from keeping the game stuck in any singular format, and feel right at home with the rest of it. Difficulty will vary depending on the person playing, but I am happy to report that there is something for just about everyone here, and that's not a statement you'll hear me say about games made by Treasure very often. The game has 3 difficulties, from easy to hard, one of which was added to the American version specifically. Each one does really feel like a proper fit for its name, and provides just the right amount of challenge without ever feeling impossible. The game is also surprisingly forgiving considering Treasure's reputation with difficulty. Each time you die, you're able to simply continue, and the game will put you back as far as the beginning of the current stage, or the last checkpoint you reached. This is added to the fact that most stages take less than a couple of minutes each. I could see some purists of Treasure's more challenging games finding fault with this, but I honestly think it does more good than harm. Remember, we're talking about Astro Boy here, a property created with children in mind. And don't get me wrong, the game is still difficult. Treasure's brand of challenge and wackiness is here and well. It's just made in such a way where you won't have to restart from the beginning every time you mess up. It also helps that each stage is, as I said before, relatively short, though still satisfying, making it a great fit for portable gaming. As far as the general feel of the game goes, it's quite nice. The impact of each shot and punch you throw has a very rewarding feel to it, and it becomes very addicting very quickly. When your shots and punches actually feel like they're landing, you know you've created a successful game engine. I suppose my only complaint about it would be the occasional bit of slowdown I'd encounter when large groups of enemies would appear on screen at once. While it is mostly understandable, slowdown can affect your ability to dodge or counter an attack right, since this is a game that requires a lot of pinpoint precision to succeed. It shouldn't throw you off too much, but it will happen every once in a while. Just something to note. For a Game Boy Advance title, the game's graphics and effects were pretty stunning for the time, and frankly, they still are. Just look at the way this boss fight plays out, and how the enemy continues to increase in size until almost the entire screen is taken up. Talk about wild! The sound in this title is no slouch either, as Treasure pumped out another great soundtrack, even paying homage to some of their other games. For example, this music from the fight with Pook is reminiscent of the Gunstar Heroes soundtrack. Treasure sure is consistent, but the real filling of the game is in its various boss fights. Despite there being over 20 of them, each fight is completely unique and different from the last. Some will encourage you to dive right in and get as many hits in as possible, others will test your patience while waiting for the right opening to spring. But most importantly, each one feels immensely satisfying to defeat. Dodging a large attack from an enemy only to counter it with a special attack of your own is a great feeling that never gets old. To say this story is involved would be quite an understatement. In fact, if you're unfamiliar with the property, as well as the other various works of Osamu Tezuka, Astro Boy's creator, you're likely to feel pretty overwhelmed by the sheer volume of characters and story going on here. It's filled with all kinds of wacky twists, some of which even involve other Tezuka properties. While you do encounter multiple characters from Astro Boy, such as Pook, Atlas, and Dr. Tenma, you also come across the likes of Unico, Princess Knight, Blackjack, and even Phoenix. The game's plot does follow most of the main conventions that its previous incarnations were based off of, such as Astro learning more about his past, the philosophy of what it means to be a human or robot, and how to truly achieve peace between the two. A lot of the series' main battles, such as the ones with Atlas and Pluto, still happen, but there's a lot more to this plot than meets the eye. Just ask the Death Mask. So what's actually going on here? Well, let's begin at the beginning. As you play through the game the first time, you'll see that the playthrough is titled Birth. At first I thought this was simply the name of the chapter, but I was very wrong. As you reach the 6th and 7th chapters of the game, you go through a segment involving time travel, and an evil plot by the character Shiraku from a manga called The Three-Eyed One, to use the Death Mask and destroy all robots on the Earth. Even worse, once this is all revealed to you and the Death Mask attacks, the credits roll. But it's not over yet. Following the credits, Astro is saved by the Phoenix. He's also told that he'll be able to go back into the past in order to change the events that would otherwise unfold. In order to reach the 8th and final stage, Astro has to replay all of the original 7 stages and uncover new information to get there. This is going to be the point where some people groan and inevitably stop playing, and I get it. Backtracking is typically not very fun, but as it turns out, I actually did enjoy doing so here. Why? Well, for starters, all of your stat increases carry over, and you are now given the level select feature, which gives you each stage from a menu screen that unlocks as you reach each area the second time. This makes visiting and revisiting these levels a breeze. Once you find and interact with a character to forward the story, you can just exit the stage and go to the next area if you'd like, without fear of the game not saving it. There are also huge differences in some of the dialogue and interactions that take place. For example, in your first playthrough of Stage 4, the character Rag is to become the first robot president in the world before an assassination attempt by his former colleague Rock, now known as Deadcross. The second time around, Rock has now become president, with Astro witnessing a completely different set of events. On top of all this, and the new hidden areas like Dr. Blackjack's house or Duke Red's hideout, it really does end up feeling like a whole new experience by the time it's all said and done. I think my main complaint about this segment of the game is that not all of the directions on what to do next are made very clear, and it could easily take you a few hours to figure it out if you have no idea. It also doesn't help that some of these characters are hidden in some really awkward places, like Ambassador Magma here. Did you know that you were supposed to attack an invisible chunk of debris about 7 seconds into the stage? No? Oh well, no endgame for you until you figure it out. Thankfully, not every moment is like this, and there are plenty of times where the game will say where to go specifically. And it all leads to some pretty interesting revelations. The Death Mask, as it turns out, was created by Duke Red as sort of a fail-safe in case the robots ever turned on the humans and had to be stopped. We also learned that the project was basically taken over by Drake, who previously believed that robots were the cause of his daughter Primerose's disease and possible death. We would later learn that it was the radiation from the amatanium in the Death Mask itself, while it was still being built, that would cause all of this. We would also find out that this entire chain of events that changed the past was orchestrated by Shiraku, who wasn't strong enough to beat Astro in his current form, and manipulated the events of time itself in order to defeat him. Nuka, a young robot with a similar background to Astro, was made the vessel for this mask, being the driving force behind its power and actions. With all of this information gained, we finally reach Stage 8, which starts out with a gauntlet of boss fights, all before we reach the final segments. In a heated air battle with Shiraku, Astro now has to also avoid blasts from the Death Mask, which will immediately kill him if touched. This leads us to the final battle with Garen, from a manga chapter originally titled Astro Boy vs. Satan, just to give you an idea of the severity here. Hiding in his chest is Pook, or Pick, which we come to learn is his real name, who serves as sort of a mind and conscience to Garen. Defeating Pick on the inside of Garen defeats the whole entity. After the fight, Nuka reveals that she is in a weakened state, but still holds an amatanium reactor within her that will cause all life to perish unless Astro can throw her into the sun. In the final segment, Astro has to fly Nuka through a field of debris to reach the sun and save everyone in time. Once Astro reaches the sun, they manage to save the Earth, but not themselves, until the Phoenix steps in once more. Yes, it turns out they were saved after all. Astro and Nuka are able to return to Earth and celebrate with their friends. But what of Shiraku? Well, it turns out he won't be able to exact his plans for further time travel revenge anytime soon, with his third eye covered up. Who knew? Looking back, was it all worth it in the end? Did this game live up to the hype? I'm very happy to say that yes, it did. The gameplay is just as smooth as I remembered it back when the game first came out, and Treasure's level of polish and dedication is seen here in full force. This is one of those rare examples of a game based off a property that doesn't really require you to understand the original story in order to have fun playing it. You could easily just dive in, skip all the cutscenes if you wished, and still have an amazing time playing through all the stages and bosses. It's a treat for both fans and non-fans of Astro Boy alike. That said, as a longtime fan of Astro Boy who owns all 3 series on DVD and multiple volumes of the manga, I was thrilled to see so many of Osamu Tezuka's works come to life all at once, even if it made some sections of the story feel a little overwhelming at times. There are only 2 main issues that I can think of that may hold someone back from wanting to finish this, let alone play it. Having to replay all of the stages a second time, as well as backtrack multiple times after to unlock story events in their proper order to get to the final stage, is going to turn some people off, and I get that. I do personally believe that the game does enough with these events to make it feel like you're getting a whole new story experience, and even see some alterations to gameplay, which helps a ton. But you do technically replay all of the same stages you did before, just to move that small extra step. The other issue would be that the game is pretty short. You could easily beat this, not including the final stage, in about 3 hours time, with the rest only taking a couple of hours more, assuming you know where to go. With that said, I do believe the game is fun enough that this likely won't matter to most. Heck, I even found myself wanting to replay certain stages due to the fun factor they held for me. Is it a perfect game? Perhaps not. Is it a great game anyway? Yeah, you bet it is. Up until the point of actually finishing this, I could not put it down. I was completely addicted the whole time, and I have a feeling that most of you will be too. It's just that good. Not only did Treasure manage to find another success with this title, but they managed to create one of the best action games on the entire platform. Go figure. I can't recommend it enough, and hope you'll all find a way to give it the chance that it deserves too. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Have you played this game before yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're feeling generous, please consider donating to my Patreon, where awesome people like Brandon, Thomas, Zalo, Johan, Andrew, and Jonathan all help to keep this channel alive. Honestly, this has just made me want to go back, reread the manga, and rewatch all 3 of the different series again. But which one? The 60s? The 80s? 2003? Uh-oh. We've got a conundrum.